Have you ever noticed how much of our suffering begins with people? The ones we love, the ones we trust, the ones we lose. It's strange. We build our world around connection, yet so often, it's connection that breaks us. We give too much, expect too much, attach too tightly, and when things fall apart, we feel empty, betrayed, or unseen. But what if the problem isn't other people at all? What if it wears how we relate to them, how we hand over our peace like it owns theirs to keep? The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. They taught that the greatest strength isn't ever found in domination or detachment, but in disciplined love, in caring deeply while staying free, in giving without losing yourself, in being connected, but never controlled. Let's begin with the first truth. Lesson 1. Attachment is not love. Most people confuse attachment for love. They think love means needing someone so deeply that you can't breathe without them. But Epictetus would call that slavery, not affection. He reminded us, if you kiss your child or your wife, say that you only kiss a mortal. It sounds cold at first, but it's the highest form of wisdom. He's not telling us not to love. He's telling us to love wisely, to see that all things, even those we cherish most, are temporary. Because when we forget that truth, we begin to cling, and clinging always leads to pain. In modern terms, attachment turns love into possession. You start checking your phone for validation. You start fearing loss more than you enjoy the present. You stop being yourself because you're afraid of being abandoned. A Stoic doesn't avoid love, he purifies it. He loves not because he needs, but because he chooses. He says, I will give you my time, my care, my loyalty, but my peace remains mine. And that's the foundation of emotional balance. Love freely. But remember, freedom is part of love. Lesson 2. Trust is a gift, not a guarantee. In relationships, trust is like glass, fragile, beautiful, and clear until it cracks. People often say, I trust completely, as if it's a sign of loyalty. But the Stoics would call blind trust the cousin of naivety. Marcus Aurelius never said to distrust everyone, he said to understand them. People act from what they know, from what they value, from their own struggles and ignorance. When you see this clearly, betrayal stops feeling personal. It hurts, yes, but it doesn't break you. Stoicism teaches that trust should be earned by character, not assumed by emotion. You can respect others, believe in their good nature, but still anchor your peace in yourself. Because once your happiness depends on how others behave, you've given them ownership of your soul. So, how do you practice Stoic trust? You see reality, not wishful thinking. You recognize patterns instead of excuses. And you never lie to yourself in the name of love. When someone shows you who they are, don't judge, just observe. Trust their actions more than their words. And when they fail you, respond with reason, not revenge. Because your peace is worth more than your pride. Lesson 3. Ego destroys connection. Ego is the silent killer of relationships. It doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it hides behind defensiveness, stubbornness, or the need to win. We ruin bonds because we'd rather be right than at peace. Seneca wrote, no man was ever wise by chance. Meaning, wisdom requires humility, the ability to look inward and admit you might be wrong. But ego resists that. It whispers, you deserve better. You're above this. You don't need to listen. In truth, ego is fear of being small, unseen, or vulnerable. The Stoic path asks us to see beyond that illusion. It's not weakness to say, I understand. It's strength to say, I was wrong. In modern relationships, ego is everywhere. It's the refusal to apologize, the silent treatment after an argument, the scrolling past someone's message to make them chase your attention. But a Stoic doesn't play those games because he doesn't need to. His worth doesn't depend on dominance or validation. He communicates with calm clarity, not manipulation. He doesn't need to be right. He needs to be free. When you drop ego, relationships become simple again. You stop performing. You start connecting. You stop arguing to win. You start listening to understand. You no longer see love as a battlefield, but as a shared discipline, a chance to practice virtue together. The Stoics believed that relationships are not meant to complete you. They were meant to test you, to reveal your impatience, your pride, your attachments, and then challenge you to rise above them. That's why every argument, every disappointment is an opportunity for fortitude, to respond with patience when anger calls, to stay calm when the other loses control, to remain kind when others become cruel. And this is the paradox of Stoic love. The less you need control, the more peace you have. The less you cling, the more deeply you can care. The less you demand, the more respect you earn. Love, trust, ego. These are not external battles. They are inner disciplines, because the moment you master your emotions, you master your relationships. And when you master your relationships, you master yourself. This is what it means to live with fortitude, to be the calm in the storm of human emotion, to love fiercely but never fearfully, to stand steady when others break, and to remember, your peace is your greatest form of strength. Lesson 4. Forgiveness is freedom. Epictetus once said, "When someone is mean to you, remember, they act from what they think is right." He didn't mean you must agree, he meant you must understand. People harm others not out of strength but from confusion, weakness, or fear. When you forgive, you're not excusing them. You're reclaiming your peace. Forgiveness isn't saying, "It's fine." It's saying, "It's finished." Modern life glorifies grudges. We keep screenshots. We replay arguments. We turn pain into identity. But resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to choke. You keep feeding the hurt long after they've moved on. A Stoic forgives not because others are innocent, but because he refuses to remain a prisoner of his emotions. He knows anger is a chain, and peace begins the moment he decides to drop it. True forgiveness is strength. It's saying, "You no longer control my thoughts." And that's the first act of real emotional mastery. Lesson 5. Loss is a teacher, not an enemy. We spend so much of life trying to protect what we love, our relationships, our status, our plans. But everything in life, everything, is temporary. Marcus Aurelius said, "Loss is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight." To the Stoics, loss was not tragedy, it was training, a way to practice acceptance in the purest form. In modern life, when people leave or things end, we think something's gone wrong. We scroll through old messages, replay memories, ask why. But Stoicism teaches us that the world owes us nothing permanent. Every person, every moment, every joy, all are gifts, not guarantees. When you lose someone, your mind says, "I can't go on." But look deeper, you already have. Because life continues. Because you're still breathing. Because every loss strips away illusion and leaves behind what's real. Presence. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." That doesn't mean to love pain. It means to trust that life has rhythm. The Stoic grieves, but he doesn't drown. He allows the ache to teach him impermanence, to sharpen his gratitude, and to remind him that nothing external defines his soul. You don't overcome loss by forgetting. You overcome it by seeing through it. Every ending hides a deeper lesson in acceptance, and when you learn that lesson, you become unshakable. Lesson 6. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. People often mistake Stoic detachment for emotional numbness, but Stoicism was never about becoming stone. It's about being fully human without being ruled by emotion. Think of a fire. Emotion is the flame, beautiful, alive, but wild. Detachment is the hearth. It contains the fire, keeps it from burning the house down. The Stoic doesn't deny emotion. He disciplines it. He feels deeply, but he chooses his response. He doesn't lash out when insulted, doesn't collapse when abandoned, doesn't panic when plans fail, because he's anchored in what cannot be taken, his reason, his values, his character. In our time, people call detachment uncaring, but detachment isn't the absence of care. It's the presence of control. You can care for someone and still not let them dictate your peace. You can love and still walk away. You can cry and still move forward. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself every morning, you will meet the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful, and you must love them anyway. That's not coldness, that's strength. To be calm in chaos, kind amid cruelty, stable amid instability, that's Stoic detachment. It's not about withdrawing from the world, it's about engaging with it wisely. Detachment gives you vision. It lets you see what's truly in your control and what never was. It allows you to act from principle instead of impulse. It gives you the power to say, I feel this, but it does not own me. That's not the death of emotion. That's its evolution. And so the Stoic path deepens. Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Accept loss, not because it doesn't hurt, but because pain is part of being alive. Detach, not to escape feeling, but to feel without drowning. This is not weakness, it's power. The quiet kind, the enduring kind, the kind that doesn't shout but stays standing when everything else falls apart. That's what makes a Stoic unbreakable. He doesn't avoid emotion, he transcends it. Lesson 7. Expectations are the seeds of suffering. The Stoics warned against this long before social media, long before ghosting and betrayal. Epictetus said, when you are about to act, remind yourself what the nature of the act is. If you kiss your child, he said, remember you're kissing a mortal. If you love someone, remember they are free, not yours to keep. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. When we expect people to act exactly how we wish, we're trying to control what we never could. We demand permanence from impermanent beings. And when they fail, we call it betrayal, when really it's reality. Stoicism teaches this. Replace expectation with appreciation. Don't demand loyalty. Honor it when it's given. Don't expect understanding. Be grateful when it happens. Don't chase validation. Respect yourself enough to live without it. Life stops wounding you when you stop assuming it owes you comfort. The Stoic's peace comes from expecting nothing but striving for excellence anyway. He gives his best, but doesn't cling to outcomes. He loves deeply but doesn't beg for return. He acts justly, but accepts injustice with calm. When you let go of expectation, you gain something greater, freedom, because nothing disappoints you when you've already accepted that nothing is promised. Lesson 8. Jealousy is admiration without wisdom. Jealousy, the quiet poison. It hides in comparison, envy, and the false belief that life is a competition. You scroll, you see their highlight reel, and suddenly, your own peace feels small. Marcus Aurelius said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If your mind feeds on envy, you starve your soul. Because jealousy isn't really about them, it's about what you think you lack. The Stoic flips jealousy into inspiration. He looks at success and asks, what can I learn, instead of why not me? He understands that every person walks a path shaped by choices, time, and unseen struggle. So he focuses inward, not outward. The jealous man seeks to possess. The wise man seeks to improve. One compares, the other creates. Jealousy fades when gratitude grows, and gratitude is Stoicism's antidote to every poisonous thought. So when you feel envy, don't suppress it. Study it. Ask, what does this emotion reveal about my priorities? And then return to your lane, because no one can compete with a mind at peace. Lesson 9. You cannot control others. Only your response control. The illusion we spend our lives chasing. We want people to stay, to change, to understand, to love us back the way we love them. But no matter how hard you try, you can't make someone honest, loyal, or kind. Epictetus said it simply. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Our emotions, our words, our actions, these are ours. Their choices never were. The Stoic accepts this without bitterness. He stops arguing with reality. When someone leaves, he lets them. When someone lies, he sees it as truth revealed sooner. When life disappoints, he adjusts his expectations, not his dignity. To want control over others is to chain yourself to their behavior. You become a puppet whose peace depends on how others move. But when you release that control, when you say, I own my reactions, not their decisions, you become untouchable. This is not indifference. It's liberation. It's the difference between drowning in emotion and standing calmly above it. Control begins when you stop trying to rewrite the world and start mastering the self. Lesson 10. Love without attachment. Now we reach the hardest lesson. The Stoics loved deeply. Marcus Aurelius loved his wife. Epictetus spoke of brotherhood and kindness. But they all warned against one fatal trap: attachment. Attachment is not love, it's dependency dressed as devotion. It says, I need you to be happy. But Stoic love says, I choose to love you, freely, fully, but I remain whole without you. To love with attachment is to live in fear. Fear of loss, rejection, change. To love without attachment is to honor the moment without demanding it to last. Marcus wrote, accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. That includes people. Some stay, some teach, some leave. All serve the same purpose: to help you grow in understanding, patience, and compassion. The Stoic doesn't shut his heart. He purifies it. He doesn't stop caring. He stops clinging. He doesn't resist love. He releases control. This is love with wisdom. A love that strengthens instead of weakens. A love that endures because it doesn't depend. And so, as the current slows, we see the entire path more clearly. Expectation dissolves into gratitude. Jealousy transforms into humility. Control fades into acceptance. Attachment matures into freedom. This is what it means to master emotion while remaining fully human. It's not about becoming unfeeling. It's about feeling deeply but wisely. The Stoic heart is not made of stone. It's forged in fire. It's been burned, broken, tested, and yet it beats with calm precision. The modern world celebrates noise, reaction, outrage, overexposure. But the Stoic celebrates stillness, because in stillness there is strength, and in strength there is peace. You do not need to control life to be happy. You only need to control your mind. And when you do, you'll find that the world, with all its chaos, betrayal, and loss, can never take away what truly matters: your fortitude. There's a quiet power in realizing that nothing outside of you can truly shake you. When you reach that point, when pain still comes but panic doesn't, you have found what the Stoics called ataraxia, inner stillness amidst the storm. That's not indifference. That's enlightenment through endurance. The modern world praises reaction. We reward outrage, impulse, and attention-seeking. But the Stoic rewards control, control of the only battlefield that ever mattered: the mind. It's the art of remaining calm when everyone else collapses into chaos. It's choosing silence when you could choose drama. It's walking away when your ego demands you stay and fight. That's real strength. Quiet, unapplauded, but absolute. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, surrounded by war, betrayal, and death. Yet he wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't writing to impress anyone. He was writing to survive, to remind himself of what could never be taken. Because every storm passes, brother. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the failure. The things that felt like the end are simply teachers, reminders that control was never the goal. Understanding was. Acceptance was. Peace was. We often say we want peace, but we chase its opposite. We want peace while clinging to expectations. We want peace while demanding control. We want peace while seeking validation from the very people who disturb our peace. But peace cannot live where attachment rules. It grows only where acceptance is planted. To be stoic is not to suppress emotion. It's to master it. Feel everything. But don't become everything you feel. Love. But don't lose yourself. Care. But don't collapse. Speak truth. But don't argue with fools. Let people misunderstand you. Your peace is not up for debate. The world will always test you. You'll be provoked, challenged, misjudged, and even hated for being calm. Because calmness in a chaotic world looks like rebellion. But that's what the fortitude mindset is. Quiet rebellion against weakness. While others react, you reflect. While others rush, you breathe. While others seek comfort, you build resilience. That's your edge, your discipline, your detachment, your devotion to inner order. Every insult becomes training for patience. Every loss becomes a lesson in detachment. Every rejection becomes proof that your worth was never in their hands. That's the Stoic lens, the ability to turn every wound into wisdom. Courage without control becomes recklessness. Wisdom without compassion becomes arrogance. Justice without humility becomes tyranny. Temperance without love becomes apathy. So the true Stoic, the one walking the fortitude path, balances all four. He's not numb, he's stable. He's not passive, he's patient. He's not detached, he's disciplined. He doesn't chase power. He becomes power by mastering himself. You see, the Stoics never told us to escape the world, they told us to engage it, but with calm precision. To be in the noise, but not consumed by it. To lead with virtue, not vanity. To remain unmoved, not uncaring. You can live in this modern chaos and still live like a philosopher. Not by preaching, but by practicing. By being the one who stays steady when everyone else loses composure. By being unshaken, unprovoked, and unbroken. That's what true masculinity, true humanity, true wisdom looks like. Not loud, not aggressive, just unshakable. There will always be days when you forget this, when anger feels louder than reason, when loss feels heavier than strength, when the weight of the world presses too close to your chest. That's when you return to this truth. You don't control the storm, you control the sail. And every time you adjust it, even slightly, you prove the Stoics right. You prove that peace is not luck, it's practice. You prove that discipline is not restriction, it's freedom. You prove that fortitude is not hardness, it's wisdom in motion. So when the world tests you again, and it will, breathe. Observe, respond, don't react. And whisper to yourself what Marcus Aurelius wrote before dawn in his journal. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. Because everything you endure calmly becomes fuel for strength. Every hardship survived with grace becomes armor. Every emotion mastered becomes freedom. And when you finally reach that stillness, that moment when nothing external can touch your peace, that is when you've won. Not against others, but against your own chaos. So keep walking, brother. Walk steady. Walk silent. Walk with virtue burning quietly inside you. Be the calm in the storm. Be the peace in the noise. Be the proof that ancient wisdom still matters. This is the fortitude mindset. This is Stoicism in motion. And this stillness you carry, is the mark of a man who has mastered himself.